Welcome to the thrilling world of Security Squawk, where we explore cybersecurity. Guiding you through online threats, we'll aid you in understanding safety protocols and trends. Meet our gurus, Bryan from Exact IT, Reginald from Arc Solvers, and Randy from Tech Rescue. Together, we'll delve into current events and hot cybersecurity topics, helping you comprehend their impact. Stay informed, stay secure. Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. Buckle up, let's dive in.
So a company quietly paid a ransom today to a criminal group that stole from 275 million students and teachers, and they're calling it an agreement, asking everyone to trust that the hackers actually deleted the files. So we're going to get into that. Welcome to Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. I'm Bryan, joined as always by Randy and Andre. We have a lot to get into today, and I want to tell you up front why this particular combination of stories matters. Andre is going to open us up with a story that's happening and unfolding before our eyes right now. Today is literally the deadline in the ShinyHunters extortion of Canvas, the learning management platform used by 275 million students and teachers at nearly 9,000 schools worldwide. The company has appeared to pay the ransom, and we're going to talk about what that actually means. And then Randy's going to bring us something that should make every business leader genuinely uncomfortable. Google's threat intelligence group just confirmed that the first case of hackers using artificial intelligence to build a working zero-day exploit, code designed specifically to break through two-factor authentication. He's going to get into that, the details, and what we need to be worried about into the future here with AI and being able to do things like break through your tried and true security tools. And I'm going to close this out with new data from BlackFog, a report showing us that 9 out of 10 ransomware attacks this quarter were never reported. Something I've been saying on this show since day one, that we only know about 10% of the attacks and we don't know about 90% of them. So when you look at these numbers that we always talk about on Security Squawk, you have to look at it and remember it through that lens. So we'll get into what that means and what the disclosure gap actually is costing you, right, as an individual, because somebody's got to pay for this. And if you think that businesses are actually paying for cybersecurity and or cyber, what do I want to say here, ransomware attacks and cyber attacks, you're wrong. You pay for it. They're just going to raise their prices and charge you more because, like, hey, we got to defend against this stuff. We got to pay more, so we got to charge more. So let's get into it. Let's let it sink in. Andre, I'm going to toss it over to you.
Good morning, everyone.
Just to flag this one real quick, Andre. We talked about this last week, and this thing moved fast, right? We covered at the very beginning, I think it was Randy who brought it to the show. On the May 5th episode. So fill us in on what's happened since then. There's been a significant escalation. So let everybody know what's going on.
Yeah, so good morning. Just to kind of give context with this Canvas app and what it does. This is basically the tool that the schools purchased, this third-party tool, and this is where they communicate with the students, with the teachers. They post the grades when there's different collaborations between the students, like in groups. This is the app that they use. And we're talking over 9,000 schools. And if you want to just multiply, 9,000 schools with how many students, and probably 99% of these students are online, this right here becomes like you said, it just blows up quick because not only is the news picking it up, but then on the social media with kids putting on TikTok and all the other social media, like, oh, this is down, I can't see my classes. So just to kind of give you perspective, my son who goes to Florida University, this happened, let's just say around last Wednesday, Thursday, he takes his finals. And in order for a lot of the students there, in order to take the next class, you have prereqs and you have to pass those prereqs and then you can go to the next, you can take the next class. But because the Canvas system was down, the system, the bigger system wouldn't allow them to now choose the next selection of classes. And they also couldn't see their final grades. And I know my son, he was biting his nails because he took a Calculus 2 class and he didn't know, like, how did I do? And, just nervous and things like that. So it was very, very disruptive. So in total, 9,000 schools, colleges, and universities global. And there's some interesting things here because the CEO actually started to communicate via social media to let people know what was going on. And we see that approximately 3.5 terabytes of data was stolen, and it affected about 275 million users. But what made this even more pressure on the company is that when you logged into the app, they started pressuring the students, faculty, parents, everybody who has access to this app, and saying they need to pay the ransom, and just pressuring them to pressuring the university, pressuring Canvas to pay the ransom. So at the end of the day, it seems that there was a settlement that was done. I actually have a quote from the CEO, and it reads, "We understand how unsettling situations like this can be, and protecting our community remains a top priority. With that responsibility in mind, Instructure, which is the company that owns Canvas, reached an agreement with the unauthorized actor involved in this incident." So they paid up.
It's funny how they won't admit that they paid up, and they use if I had one beef with America and business and corporate America in 2026, it's that right there. We have such a problem with lack of accountability in this country. It's not even funny. And that's an example of it. They danced around the fact that they paid this ransom and they negotiated with criminals. They made it sound like a business transaction, a normal business transaction. That is what they did by releasing that statement. That CEO should be fired, just like every CEO who poorly handles a data breach. CEO, mayor, I don't care where you're from. You need to be removed because you don't know what you're doing.
Well, that's the lawyer talks for him. I'm sure that his board and the attorney says, read this.
Yes.
Hit the record button.
At the end of the day, Andre, you're still the CEO. You can still tell the lawyer, I'm not reading this way. I'm telling the people the truth.
Yeah, you can push back to the lawyer. The lawyer's going to give you.
Be a leader.
And that's right. And we say it on the show all the time. Talk to your lawyers and your insurance company before you make a public statement, because you can make things worse. But like Bryan said, at the end of the day, if you're the CEO, the buck stops with you. And yes, the lawyers told you to do it. Insurance company told you to do it. Stockholders told you to do it. Doesn't matter. You're still, the buck stops with you, and you're the one that's responsible for your decision and the decision that the company makes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I would have loved if he's going to say, "Hey, we reached an agreement." Then was my data really deleted? Do they have copies of this? Because a lot of times there was a lot of information that was in this database. What was in this database as far as that, right? Are you going to now tell the students? Is a letter going to be going out? Is credit monitoring going to be going out? Because unfortunately, 19, 20, 21-year-olds, maybe, for whatever reason, hey, we need a picture of your ID or something like that, between a group project, and like, okay, here you go. Here's a copy of my ID or something, or whatever that's or here's the password for this, my Google Docs, here it is, so all of that information is in those chat messages, and it would nice to know, was this really, was this information given back? Was it deleted? What happened?
That's a great point, because I was just about to talk about that. Because this is my issue, and I want to be clear about what this means for everyone listening to the show right now. There's no such thing as digital confirmation of data destruction. When the data is in the hands of somebody else, and ShinyHunters in this case, number one, they're not a reputable firm. They're cyber criminals. They don't have audited deletion processes, right? Like at my company, we're audited. Right? Did you do things right? Do you do things the way you say you do them? Right? And we have a third-party company come in and confirm that. These guys don't do that. Now they have all this data. They're a criminal organization with a documented track record of hacking companies like AT&T, Ticketmaster, multiple Ivy League institutions. Infrastructure paying the ransom does not mean the data is gone. It means infrastructure paid for the promise that it's gone. And for 275 million students and teachers, those are two very different things. And your data is now at risk because this organization lacks integrity and lacks the ability to handle this the appropriate way.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Brandy.
Well, there's no guarantee for sure. And so you can't, if you're involved, one of the 275 million people here, you can't rest assured that, oh, the bad guys deleted my data. And then I'm also wondering, guys, you mentioned the chat. We did a whole show on these chats that go on behind the scenes. The bad guys have basically a chat service. They negotiate with the victims over the ransom. And we saw in the chats that we looked at, you can pay one price to get your data back. And if you pay a little more, they'll tell you how they got in. So it's like, and they frame it like, we're doing you a service. We found a hole, and then we'll tell you how we got in. If there's a CEO that's involved in one of these negotiations, you just have to remember 80% of all people, or 80% of all organizations that get breached, they get breached again within a year. What does that mean? They might tell you the exploit they use, but fixing that one exploit is not going to fix your whole system. We're going to look at that a little bit during my section of the show. But bottom line, just because you patch something doesn't mean you're now cyber secure. Just because you have antivirus, like there's a whole lot more to it than just a couple of fixes, and then now you're cyber secure. And also on top of that, it's not a destination. It's not, oh, here's how we got in. You fixed it. Boom. I've arrived. I'm now cyber secure. Being cyber secure is a moving point, and you are on a journey towards it. You never get there 100% because stuff changes tomorrow. All the time. You should be in a speedboat behind it, and boom, on your way to it. What's that?
It changes tomorrow. So it's not like we've changed the rules. Yeah, technology is dynamic. AI is improving every day. Well, so is everything else, right? Cyber criminals, security, all that stuff, right? It all keeps moving, and we have to understand that, right? And it's not a point in time, as you rightly pointed out. Guys, one other thing I wanted to point out here, and I just thought about it. When I was doing research for the show, I was torn between two stories. I was torn between the story I'm going to cover and another story about the gentleman ransomware group we're all familiar with, got hacked, right? So what happens if ShinyHunters gets hacked?
Yep.
I don't know.
Deal's gone.
Just putting it out there. Not going to go into it too deep, but yeah, go look at it. Gentleman ransomware group was just hacked, and that's what happens. These cyber criminals have really poor cybersecurity. So if I'm a cyber criminal group or I'm a nation state and I know you have this data, guess where I'm going? I'm going after the cyber criminals. See if I can get into their network to get that data. Because then I don't have to pay for it on the dark web. I can just steal it from their network, which probably has poor cybersecurity, because they all do. They don't worry about cybersecurity. They just worry about getting into your network and hacking you. They don't protect their stuff like companies do when your company should do, right? And there are companies out there, very few, in my opinion, that do the right thing every day and do everything they need to do to protect your data. In most cases, businesses are just getting by with the bare minimum, cutting corners left and right.
And two more things. We always hear from business owners, oh, I have cyber insurance. I'll just deal with it then. There was no talk about cyber insurance in this case in the sense of protecting them, because cyber insurance doesn't protect you. And then the second thing is, oh, I have backups. Again, there was no talk about backups. This was, if anything, this was just more of a PR crisis nightmare that, during finals week is when this happened. So even though you have insurance, even though you have backups, but these bad guys still can find a way to cause some type of destruction in your business
Yep.
and then get you to pay up.
Yep.
It's got to be
So-
multi-layered approach to all of this, multi-layered, and it's got to be where it's once they get one thing, they don't get everything. Go ahead, Brian. I know you were going to say something.
I just love the fact that we get to learn so much from these attacks, right? Like, look at the planning that went into this. They didn't just get in and do this because they had access. This was timed. So they probably had access to this network for a long period of time, as we always cover on this show, right? They knew what they were getting themselves into, when they were going to do it, exactly what they were going to strike. And then they had a plan after they struck to make sure that they continued to ramp up the pressure to get that company to pay. Andre kind of alluded to it a little bit when he spoke, but at the end of the day, when you got all these students out there right around graduation time, as Andre said, his son was one of those people logging into a system trying to get information because it's that time of year. They got to do these things, right? And there's deadlines and timelines that they got to meet. And they log in with their student information and they see a message that says, we're going to ransomware you if you don't call and put pressure on your school to tell the company to pay us. That's literally what was happening to students of these universities that use this system. That's genius pressure tactics. Because most people see that message, they have no clue. They have no clue whether that's legit or not. Do they have ransomware? Can they get attacked? What the hell's going on? Why am I seeing this message when I log into my school system?
Yep. And now imagine X amount of students from the school calling the front desk, the registrar office. Hey, I'm getting this. Calling school police, like, like texting their parents, and then their parents are calling the school. Like all of this, man. It was madness, and it wasn't the university's fault. That's even the biggest thing.
Well, we saw that with power schools, right? Same thing, right? I mean, they just let the school districts deal with the fallout of that, and that wasn't cool. So, anything else we're going to add to that? Good discussion. Lots of different dynamics there, right? From poor management decisions to well thought out cyber criminals. If this story doesn't give you a pretty good clue on what's going on out there and how well prepared the criminals are versus how unprepared the businesses are, I'd be highly skeptical about any app, anything I download on my phone or my computer, and what I'm agreeing to.
Yep. But sometimes sometimes you just have to agree to it. So just be careful what you're putting in the conversations. Well, yes, you can choose by not, but you
don't have to go on TikTok. Not a requirement.
Right.
I mean, so, and you just got to be careful, right? That's the thing, right? You go to school says, hey, we use this system. You sign up with your account. It pops up, says terms of service. What are you going to do, right? You're not going to read through that and click no. You got to go to school. You got to use their system to do your thing, right? So you're just going to click yes and move on with your life. God knows what you just signed away there, right? And companies are going to start doing that, Andre. Companies are going to start protecting themselves from this kind of stuff in the terms of service. Like, hey, if we get hacked, blah, 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 we got to be like grossly negligent, meaning like they knew about it, right? And everybody's just going to be like, oh, we didn't know about it. Right. And it's just a big, spiral of death right now, right? Because there's no enforcement, there's no regulation, there's nobody forcing businesses to do this stuff the right way, so they can play dumb, bury their head in the sand and get away with it until government steps up and says all businesses need to be at this level. And if you're not, you can't do business. Sorry. Which
isn't going to happen because they're a little busy right now, our government.
Yeah, it is, but it will happen because those rules already apply for brick and mortar, right? You want a brick and mortar store, you got to make it handicap accessible. You got to do this. You got to do that. all kinds of things that people don't think about when they're like, I'm going to open up a pizza shop. I'm going to open up a dress store. And then they go get a permit and they find out they got to do all these things that they don't have to like normally do in a house or something like that, right? The same thing is going to happen in the digital world. Businesses are not going to be allowed to open a business online and operate without having these things in place, whatever they are, guardrails, so people don't get hurt. That's what's going to play out. I don't know what it's going to look like and how it's going to play out, but just look at how businesses went from in the 1910s and 1920s and evolved. Look at how they operate and what they have to do to start up today in 2026. In the early days, you could basically throw a shingle on your house and say, this is my business, and nobody cared. You do that today, you'll get fined. We got in our town, we got little kids just trying to set up lemonade stands and they get told, take it down.
Oh,
right. But it happens. That's the world we live in now. All right, Randy, we'll move it over to you now.
Yeah. This is the
Ready to go, sir?
I'm ready.
I got to find your image. I got to get your image up on stage. There it is. This is a good one.
Yeah. So, you want to introduce? You want me to just take over?
Let me see what I got here. So you're going to talk. I got to remember what you're going to talk about. The Google disclosure. Oh, Jesus. So Google just confirmed, Randy, if my memory serves me correctly, that a skilled nation state hacker and a criminal group with AI. So I need you to connect the dots with me there on that. Okay. Just kind of release this 0-day using AI that circumvents MFA, which to me sounds really scary. Most people probably doesn't know what that means, but what's going on here? It sounds really deep and really well orchestrated.
It is and it isn't at the same time. Okay. Often we see these hacks and breaches, which are very clever, but at the same time, we're like, yeah, the high school class could have probably pulled that one off. But anyway, what happened in this particular case was they went and found the source code for a very popular web admin tool. Okay. So they went in there and they basically told their chat GPT, if you will, their bad AI. They told the AI to go in there and just look for vulnerabilities. And they found a vulnerability inside of the web admin tool. So Google's not yet released the name of the web admin tool, but has said it's extremely popular. Google saw the
Is this a web admin tool for an MFA software?
No, it's a web admin tool for, well, we don't know. We don't know. But it was a web admin tool that required MFA to be able to use it.
Okay.
But deep in the bowels of the code, the AI found one little script line from the original author that said, if this is true, then user is trusted, basically.
Yes.
So it bypassed it didn't need MFA. So MFA is about trust.
I see it. I'm looking at it now. Yeah. Yep.
And they needed to have a username and password to be able to get to this. One of my points I'm going to talk about in just a minute. They needed to be able to have a username and password. So they had to sign in, but then there was something that they could do next that allowed them to basically get through. So what this is, it's not the first time AI has been used to do bad things. It's not the first time that AI has been used in an attack, but this is the first time we know that AI was used specifically to go around MFA by finding vulnerabilities and it's an open source tool. That's how we know it's probably not like an Okta or something like that. It's probably some kind of dashboard for WordPress. if I had to guess. But it's an open source tool. They found a way to get around MFA, and basically it would have affected millions of people. Google caught them. One of the ways that Google caught them was the script was obviously vibe coded. Vibe coded, if you haven't heard that yet, ultimately it's when somebody that doesn't know how to code sits down with Claude Code and says, build me an app. Okay, I'll do it, says Claude Code. And you go back and forth. Eventually you build an app. Claude Code tells you what to do. You put it where you need to put it. This appeared to be vibe coded because it had the script had a lot of things that AI often has. One, the script had hallucinations in it, which is where AI makes stuff up, because AI, at the end of the day, even bad AI, is trying to please you. If it doesn't know something, it'll make it up. The AI had basically chunks of Python code, like right out of textbooks, and also apparently comments right out of, education strings and stuff like that. And it also had like a fake score built in there. So apparently Google was able to catch it because it was obviously AI, what was going on. And then my last little point that I wanted to make was the bad guys needed a good username and password to be able to get in and bypass MFA using this AI built exploit that they had. The reality though, y'all, your username and password and multi-factor can't be your only tool in your toolbox that you're using to defeat the bad guys, right? So do you still need MFA? Yes. You need it now more than ever. Be all on it, stay on it, just do it. You got to have it. Very important, but it can't be your only tool. You can't just say, oh, and we talked about this a little bit in the last segment. You can't just say, oh, I've got MFA turned on, therefore I'm cyber secure. No, you got all kinds of things you need to be doing. Okay. You need to be monitoring what's going over your network. You need to be monitoring files and stuff that are changing. You need to be able to do this instantly now, by the way, because of bad AI, if you will. You need to have a zero trust approach to files that are allowed to run on your systems. If you've never seen them before, they should be blocked. You got to watch your passwords. You got to do your backups. There's like so many things here you need to do. And it's not just this one little thing. But if this was all you had and Google hadn't caught it, you would have been basically screwed. So that's kind of the gist of what happened and what they are talking about.
All right. I agree with everything you said. I also say to developers that make sure that you use secure by design principles and don't do what these knuckleheads did, which was hard code trust exceptions into their software. That's so, and like you said, yeah, you think it's sophisticated, and it is in a sense. Yes. But again, this is not a bug logic. This is not a memory flaw, right? Which is taking advantage of hardware, software, input, output flaws, right? That's really high level stuff. You got to know what you're doing there, right? Not many people do. That's all I'm saying. This was not that. This was some developer who came along and said, I need an easy way to get into this app so I don't have to go through MFA every time I want to do this, do that, test it. Great. When you put that in production, take that out. It's pretty simple. But you left it in. These guys used AI to find it. And I promise you, this will be the one thing cyber criminals are going to use AI for in the early days when it comes to cybercrime. They're going to scan every legacy piece of software that's been invented over the last 30 years. Are already doing it. Mythos found 300 vulnerabilities in Firefox in a matter of 30 minutes that have been in existence for 30 plus years. Microsoft's chief developer came out and said, we're still using code from the very first version of Windows in critical pieces of Windows. And he's basically saying, we know that there's a problem with that code. That's why they're closed source. That's why they do what they do. But they also realize that the time is coming where that's not going to be an advantage for them anymore. And they're going to get found out. So they got to get that stuff out of there as they build Windows and build more operating systems for businesses to use. That's what these companies are faced with right now. They're trying to figure this out quick. Banks, they were called on the carpet by the U.S. Treasury Secretary saying like, yo, you guys got to start using Mythos against yourself right now and get your holes patched, because when this thing hits the streets, you're cooked. That was the advice the government gave our banks. They know they're cooked. And the banks are some of the most secure institutions out there, in my opinion, when it comes to cybersecurity compared to other businesses. So it's serious.
Yeah, I'm going to touch up on the vibe coding, because we're starting to see, small business, not necessarily in the small business, you have employees that are downloading the cloud Anthropic and, starting to do all of these things. And for them, what they see is like, oh, look, it works. And for them, it works, meaning the app works, right? And then they're integrated into the Google Sheets and the Microsoft 365s and, the APIs and all these flows that they're doing. And then they don't know about the structure of security. They don't know about all of the things that happen in the background, and may unintentionally now open up the company to these type of flaws in the systems. So I guess putting it back to you, Randy. So if a company does have a little guru in their hands that is doing something really cool for the company, and it's like, wow, we just took something that was taking us hours a week, and now we have an app that can do it. What is the next step now in now making sure that this is safe? Because now it's in production. Now they've integrated with 365 in Google Workspaces. What should one do then?
I'm going to tell you right now that you shouldn't be doing what you're doing.
Okay.
Because you have no experience developing software, and now you're trying to be a software development shop. And there are processes that you need to follow if you want to develop secure code and things like that you just can't vibe code your way through. Randy, take it away.
No, that's the thing, Andre. It is happening, and it is a real reality. And the answer to it requires some knowledge of coding. One of the things you can do right away, everything you make, you ought to be putting into, and I'm not going to get off in the details here, and what I'm saying is debatable, but it ought to be in some sort of a GitHub, whatever, where it's keeping versions of things. And then you can have AI actually go and scan your code. Maybe it could be Claude, make OpenAI Codex, whatever it is, maybe Claude Code, but scan your code and look for vulnerabilities. But I got to tell you though, Andre, because I do this, I've got a programming degree, a programming background, and it's one of the greatest things ever to be able to sit down and use this kind of stuff and be able to do things that I've thought about for the last 40 years. They're basically easy now. But at the end of the day, I'm pushing back with the AI on the regular. Like, why are you doing this? This is not secure. And it'll come back and it'll be like, oh, my bad. You're right. Let's fix that and make it secure. If I was just a vibe coder with no experience whatsoever, it would just be doing things like that at least once a day, if not more. I love that I made Bryan laugh.
Because I used to manage development teams, and I used to deal with the same crap with human beings. But the funny thing is like, you're right, but you're willing to deal with that bullshit because it can code so fast. Like, I wanted to kill my humans because it was like, you just lost us 2 weeks of development time there. Now it's just like, okay, whatever, just fix it. Right. And I wish it was like that 30 years ago, but it's so funny. Like it is, you're still managing the development in that same sense. But when they screw up, it's like, so what? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, I mean, yeah, you don't want to put something in production that has a vulnerability. No, right? So that's why you want to check your code before it goes anywhere on the internet that can be touched, right? But at the same time, it's not as detrimental when they mess up, right? I mean, I would have guys code for 2 weeks and it would come back and the code was messed up and we'd have to start over. And that's no good, right? Now you got to go talk to somebody and tell them why you're over under budget, right? And that's no fun either. So,
and I would also say, like, Andre, when I use something that's open source, once again, this is debatable, okay? And I know it has holes in it, but I bring it over to my own Git. I copy it over to our own place. So, like, if the bad guys get in control of that open source thing, and they implement something in there, it doesn't automatically get pushed out to mine. I know there's other ways to do that. You could actually check the code that was added. There's other ways. But bottom line, it's very dangerous. If it's somebody that has no idea what they're doing, it's very dangerous. And, you know, but so was the Old West, and certain personalities moved out to the Old West to make their millions because they had a appetite for that. And I'm not justifying it or anything like that, but I'm just saying, like, there's some people that we're not gonna be able to tell them it's dangerous and they're going to quit. They're going to be like, well, what are we waiting on if it's dangerous, you know, to quote a movie. So,
all right. So to wrap it up, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so I guess that's where we come in and we block those integrations and we block the 365 to be able to just do single sign-on or just talk to those, you know, exchange servers and et cetera. Yep.
And you want to make sure you have that AI policy established and in place, right? What can you use it for? What you can't use it for? Everybody's AI policy should say you cannot use Claude code, like, in our environment, like, whatsoever. Like, you need to get ahead of this, right? 6 months ago, your AI policy only said what LLM you could use. As Randy said, it's a moving target, right? So this is why you need an advisor to come into your business and say, hey, 6 months ago, we were just worried about LLMs and people going into Claude and, you know, Grok and Chat GTP and, you know, putting data in there in the prompt and prompting and blah, right? Well, we've evolved. Yes, that's still there. That's still a thing. That's where the majority of the users are, but you're going to start having users play around with Claude code. If you don't have a policy that says they can or can't do that, and what systems they can run Claude code on and what systems they can't, you're going to have everybody running Claude code in 6 months before you know it. And they're going to be doing things that they don't even know is happening on their machines that is causing massive risk in your business. And that's the reality. So one important thing here, guys, Google did point out for some reason, and I don't know why in this story, they pointed out North Korean ATP 45 and Chinese APT 27, which are both government groups. They also pointed out that Russian linked groups, not necessarily nation state, but private, are all separately confirmed to be using AI vulnerability for this exact research, right? So what they're doing, in other words, is they didn't just stumble upon this app, right? They're going, like I said, they're going through everything that has been published, put out on the internet that's being used actively today, and they're putting all their AI tools through those systems. So hardware, devices, firewalls, switches, all that stuff is being tested somewhere in the world by somebody, AI, looking for these vulnerabilities. Software, dashboards, all this stuff that we talked about in this segment, it's all being tested right now by these groups around the clock to see if they can break in. And they're looking for things like trust credentials in code, hard-coded trust credentials, right? And it's all over the place. Look, I know guys that do threat hunting for a living, right? The stuff that we're seeing AI do now, they used to do that manually themselves.
Yep.
And the amount of things that these guys would find and never disclose, because it just wasn't worth their time. The company that they would go to probably wouldn't listen anyway, but they're the good guys. They're never going to use this stuff for bad. Those days are coming to an end when only the good guys know about these things. The bad guys are going to find out about these millions and millions of vulnerabilities that are out there in the world today. And they're going to find them, and either they're going to disclose them properly and we're going to get them fixed, or they're going to take advantage of it. And that's where we're heading into, unfortunately.
Yep.
All right, guys. Last one here. Let's wrap it up. So this segment, I wanted to jump on it because it backs up a lot of the things that I talk about on the show all the time. I think this statistic that I have up on the screen, 9 out of 10 attacks are hidden, if that's what we want to say, right? But we only know about 10% of the attacks that are out there. 90% of them never see the light of day. They may hit the dark web, and then some aggregate sites may pick them up. But at the end of the day, they're really not publicly disclosed, right? It's just a ransomware group saying, we got this company. We don't know if that's true or not. And the company will never come out and admit that they got hit. And that's the world we're kind of living in right now. So BlackFog, they put out this report. Anti-data exfiltration company is what they do. And part of what they do is they have intel to track ransomware incidents across both public disclosures and then what they detect through their platform. And in their 2026 report that just dropped last week, is they have this number that I have up on the screen. It should fundamentally change how every business owner thinks about ransomware risk, right? Because if you don't think you're going to get hit and you don't think your time's coming, I mean, we can only say for 10, 15 years, it's only a matter of if, but when, right? When becomes more and more of a probability for you as we move into the future, right? So you're going to, like, in the future, in 5, 10 years, you're going to be looking back going, man, I should have listened 20 years ago. And you're going to look like stupid because you had all this time to figure it out. It's not like you only had 2 or 3 years. You had 20 some years. That's the reality, right? We've known about this stuff for a long time. And it's going to take a long time for this to play out the way I'm describing. This ain't going to happen in the next year or two, right? AI, how all this plays out is all going to, and cybercrime is going to go right along with it. So I just want to point out some numbers here, guys, that I think should be in every business leader's head that came out of this, right? One is the average ransom demand in Q1 of 2026 was just over $1 million. And that is the first time it's crossed over that threshold. We were hovering around 800, 900,000. Now we're over 1 million. So the average data stolen per undisclosed incident is about 743 gigabytes. So a little under a terabyte. That's the average that gets stolen. So imagine all the data that's out there in the dark, like in the dark web or just in cyber criminals networks, right? The average time given to pay, any guesses, guys?
7 days.
7.7 days.
Wow.
Well, I cheated.
So CEOs can only hang in there about a week before the pressure gets to them and they go, oh, I'm going to write the check. And it's funny. We got fired by a client once because we suggested to them in a tabletop exercise that the guy kept going to me, I'll never pay the ransom. I'll never pay the ransom. And I kept giving him scenarios where, like, you're going to have to pay the ransom at some point. Like, I'm going to put you in a scenario where you're going to have to say, you know what? Enough's enough. I'll pay it at this point. Right. And this guy and I was doing it to prove a point. Well, they fired us because of it, because he was suggesting, or he was thinking that I was suggesting that they should consider paying the ransom at some point. When all I was doing was taking them through a mental exercise of where's your real limit? Like, if it's really, I'll never pay, great. Then we'll figure that out. But I'm going to still take you through that stress test to see where your breaking point is. Hey, if you want to fire me over that, fine. I'm doing the right thing by you. That's a real tabletop, right? No doubt, right?
Yeah, that's
Am I wrong,
disturbing.
Yeah.
Right? That's a real tabletop. When you're saying, okay, you've been down for 2 days. Oh, so what? We're not going to pay the rent. Okay, you've been down for 2 weeks. And now this is what's happening in your business. Customers are calling. You can't move money, blah, blah, blah. We were giving them all these scenarios. And you can see the frustration building because every scenario you're giving them means like, I'm going to say no, but I'm also basically saying I'm going to have to start losing revenue, firing employees. Like how are you going to make it through this, making this decision? Because the reality of it is, and my point is you will be, as a business owner, you will get to an inevitable point where there's always a price to save your business. You're emotionally wrapped in it, or somebody along the way is. Whether you answer to a board or somebody hired you, if you were not the founder, somebody probably hired you to be the CEO, and that person's going to put pressure on you. So you got to decide. You got to decide what your threshold is, and it's a really good idea to figure this out before you're actually in the event. That's all I'm saying. Any thoughts on this, guys? Anything that stuck out to you in terms of the numbers or anything like that?
Yeah, I like one paragraph. It was talking about how traditional cybersecurity focused on keeping the attackers out. And it talked about like now with modern cybersecurity and obviously with AI, here we are, and we're now having to worry about, everything we just talked about, the SaaS applications, employees uploading, vibe coding, and so forth like that. So it's just a new way of how all of this is now having to be defended. And of course, we would always also hear from clients saying, well, my data is in the cloud. But now you're connecting your cloud data to all of these different AI things. And now there's no, compliance oversight and security reviews. So, and they're basically, the article is just highlighting how that's going to be the next threat venue, for lack of better words. And that's how the next, threats are going to happen because of how we are managing our data, or how, the companies are managing their data.
And you, right on. And to add on with that, you mentioned earlier in the segment, in a different segment, Bryan, you mentioned about how this was going to tie all together. And one of the things in this article was how the bad guys are increasingly using AI, and using AI to do everything, which shortens up the time involved for everything. And you already said this, but just to piggyback on what you said and just throw a little comment out there, you talked about AI opening up risk because, the I in IT is information. The I in CISO, which is a cybersecurity officer, the I in CISO, information. Companies' information is now or quickly becoming our number one risk out in the world. We can lose it. We can get sued over it. It is a huge risk factor. And for the last 20 years, guys like me and Andre and Bryan, we've been talking about, keep your info, your data, if you will, keep it secure, blah, blah, blah. And now people they're just shoveling it by the shovel loads into the mouth of AI. They're putting it in there as fast as they can. And it is a crazy risk that we are exponentially exploding as we speak.
Yep. And quite frankly, as I look at this article and look at all the data and I take a step back, it's like, you look at the numbers and it's like business people, cyber criminals, it's like scumbags versus scumbags at the end of the day. And here's why I say that. In the United States, right, we account for half of all undisclosed attacks. So that means half the businesses in this country are cool with not telling the world that they got hacked. So right there, half the world lacks integrity. So if you have integrity, you're half the population, because apparently the other half doesn't give a shit. Healthcare leads disclosed attacks by 27%. Well, yeah, because when people can't, the ambulance can't drop patients off, people are going to notice.
Right.
They don't have the luxury that manufacturing does that leads undisclosed attacks at over 20%. So yeah, manufacturing has the luxury of like lead time. It takes a while for those products to get to the shelves, right? So if they can clean up the mess before people notice products not on the shelves no more, they're good. They don't have to tell nobody. And that happens all the time. Companies in that sector are getting hit more than any other industry. And most of them choose silence. Oh, by the way, logistics, they had the biggest increase, 200% year-over-year surge in ransomware attacks. So they're going after your manufacturing companies. They're going after your transportation. What does that tell you? They don't want products showing up on the shelves. And they want to put pressure on those companies who need to get it there. And they know it works. Right? That's the chain, right? Comes off the production line. It goes onto a truck. And they're attacking both.
And that goes back to that story that you mentioned where you got fired over trying to tabletop 2 weeks in, you're going to pay the ransom or whatever, and saying, you know, and someone basically pushing back so hard that they ran you off. And the reality is you can't do your logistics in 2 weeks. Your company's going to be dead in the water. Yeah. You know what I mean? And you're going to do anything. You'll give them
this
your
is a financial services company. So here's the risk to this company. If they don't move money every single night, they're in violation of FINRA and SEC rules.
There you go.
So it's not, they don't have any leverage. They need to move the money. If they don't move the money, they are custodians of people's money. They have to do it. You know what I'm talking about, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was the risk that they were faced with. And I got this guy in my face telling me he's never going to pay. He doesn't care if he's down. I'm like, that makes 0 sense. Like, that's not reality for you. All right, guys, appreciate the input. Anything else you want to add? I can tell on I can see in Andre's face. He wants to talk it up here. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
No, I did have one more thing. It talked about how the report talked about 38% of the publicly disclosed attacks were not unattributed, meaning that the ransomware group didn't even really tell them like their real names or who's behind it. Yeah. And one of the reasons that is because the bigger the group gets, the more target they have on their back from government agencies. So sometimes it's rather, or maybe, you know, they're moonlighting and they don't want ShinyHunters to know that they're doing side work, right?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that one up, dude, because I saw that one. I didn't think to talk about it on the show. Dude, that's a new tactic all day long. Like, we talk about, like, we've always been able to highlight new tactics on this show, right? I'm going to talk about one that we've talked about for 2 years now that the data has proved us right. Like, I swear to God, if somebody went back on this show and analyzed everything we've said and whether it's come true, our batting percentage is probably like close to 1,000. It's got to be in the 900s.
It's 950 or 975. Easy.
Randy, go ahead and do a vibe code on that for us, please.
Yeah, do it. Have it analyze all our transcripts for the last 5 years and analyze what we said and whether it actually came to fruition. Okay. So that's good. You know, that's good, Andre, because I think that that's going to be something that we're going to be talking about a lot more in the future. Just like, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago when I said, hey, my prediction for whatever year is going to be ransomware is going to die. And data exfiltration is going to be the only thing that these guys do to make money. It's coming, right? Well, data exfiltration occurs in 96% of all attacks. Ransomware is no longer primarily about encrypting your files and demanding money. They just take the data before they encrypt anything. They have 2 levers: pay to restore your systems and pay to keep your data off the internet. They're 2 separate ransoms, 2 decisions, and the data is already gone before you even know they got in and stole your information. So you got to watch this stuff. I mean, it's evolving as Randy said the goalpost keeps moving, and you got to stay with it. That's why you need to subscribe to this podcast and stay, because we give it to you real. We don't bring on people promoting their products. We just look at what's going on out there in the world, and we give you our perspective, and we share with you our expertise. So share this show out. If you're getting value, show it to your friends and family. If you know somebody in business who could benefit from knowing about this information, please send it to them, because that is how we grow this channel. So, all right, guys, let's bring it home. Today I had a real time dimension that I don't think any of us should take for granted. Andre's story had actual deadlines, which actually expired today, but they already took care of it. And a company that appears to have paid criminals that asked for about $275 million, paid the criminal group and took it for their word that the data was going to be deleted. So we'll find out how that plays out here in the next weeks and months. Randy came to us with a story on AI and how that's producing the new attack tools, or the new generation of attack tools, I guess we could call that. And the first confirmed use was specifically designed to break the most commonly recommended basic security control. So you can see they ain't messing around. They're going right after the things that they know prevent them, because they don't want these blockers in their way, right? And I've always said that. You put up enough blockers, these guys are going to move on somewhere else, because they know there's another company out there that doesn't have all this stuff up, right? So, and what I always said is, like, you don't have to do everything, but you need to do enough to get them to go away, right? We're getting to a place where that's not going to be the case anymore, guys. You're going to have to do everything, because AI is not going to go away, and it can run 24/7 and beat on your door until it gets in. My story, guys, I wrapped it up with that report, giving us that entire picture of where ransomware is at today. Roughly 1/10 of what's actually happening. 9 times as many attacks are hidden than disclosed. Data is stolen in 96% of those incidents, and the average demand has now crossed $1 million. The common thread here, everything we covered in today, is this: ransomware is a business problem that is being managed at the IT level, and the gap is where almost all the damage happens. Organizations that continue to operate their cybersecurity and their protections out of their IT department and not out of their C-suite will continue to pay the ransom. Will continue to understand that we now understand, after getting hit with ransomware, this is a business decision, not an IT decision. So you can either learn the hard way or watch shows like this, look at your colleagues, companies who are getting hit, figure out what they didn't do right, and do the right thing. Using a free tier product without auditing its security controls is a business decision. That is what you're producing when you create vibe code things, free tier products. Calibrating your risk to the disclosed 10% instead of the actual 100% is a business decision, and it shows that you lack integrity as a CEO and a company. None of these failures live in a server room. They live in a boardroom, and you need to remember that. That's a show. Thanks to Randy. Thanks to Andre for bringing it today. We'll see everyone next week. Stay safe, stay secure. And if you really want to support us, you can go buy us a coffee over at buymeacoffee.com/security squawk. Stay safe out there, everyone. Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.